Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com here with an Avowed build using the fighter. This is how I cleared the game the very first time, screwed up with basically everything in the build as far as which weapons to use, which skills, attributes, passives, and so on. So if you're like me, want to nuke things with a two-hander, feel strong, tanky, and high survivability, this build is for you. Timestamps are below. If you wish to skip ahead and do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up if you like this Avowed build and want more. Let's get started. Okay, first thing up when we're building a fighter is you need to understand that you can mix and match skills from different trees. So you're still going to want to maintain the fighter identity, which is kind of this brawler 2H massive nuke playstyle. We're going to lean into a bunch of survivability skills at first using a two-hander. The reason why two-hander is so strong is one specific passive, Bleeding Cuts, I love. So allows you to do a power attack with a greatsword and deals bleed accumulation. You can stack multiple status effects on top of each other and do tons of damage over time. And it's a way to clear ads quickly, powerfully, and you get something very early on, Dawnshore, a weapon that you can use throughout the entirety of the game, and it's amazing. But you need to build for survivability, especially if you're playing on the highest difficulty. This will be brutal because you are playing in close quarters, and even if you're using Kai, it's going to be tough. So this build is going to have a lot of offensive firepower. It's going to be flexible, but you're not going to have all of the range, and resource management can be an issue until you reach later on in end game. So the very first decision you're going to make with your build is which background to choose. Mainly this is for RP, determines kind of your starter weapon in the tutorial, but you'll quickly progress out of that. I recommend War Hero because I'm a meathead and want this background and it kind of fits with the build, so I'd recommend that. Attribute points is another thing. So with attribute points, you're going to have a max level of 30 and you can select 27 attribute points. The obvious choice here is a strong emphasis into might, which does overall base damage and carrying capacity. And then also constitution, which is going to help your max health and overall survivability. Perception is also very valuable because it's going to increase your critical hit chance. Max range, not so much important, but getting critical hit is a bit tough, especially early on. Resolve is also going to help you with max stamina and second wind efficiency. Second wind is if you get nuked and you die, you'll pop up once in a while. So I'd recommend investing high into might as your primary attribute. And then constitution and perception will give you a good balance of survivability and damage with a little bit in resolve, and don't do any intellect like me. The reason why is you can pump this up very easily with consumables. So before you go and talk to a bunch of NPCs and gather all those quests and do all those quest turn-ins, take all of these consumables that vastly increase your intelligence, resolve, and all of these things. Even if you don't plan on using them, it will be very helpful to pass those specific skill and dialogue checks. So weapon choices I talked about, we're going to go with a two-handed sword at first, then we're going to go with the bow. The reason we're going to use the bow is you get weak points, so you're going to have this visualization, basically headshots, that's going to increase damage passively without any passive, so it's a way to get a lot of damage early on. And you also have stealth. So with stealth, you don't have to go all up close in melee. You can hang in the back, and as long as that hidden thing is on your UI, you're going to get extra damage. So the bow has two ways early on to get increased damage without any passives. You're going to use this as an opener at range to try to take out the big target in the back, like a spellcaster, a mage, a healer, or something else, and then quickly bar swap to your 2H for melee combat. Now we're going to go into skills, what to take and why. First thing we're going to do is take charge. This is going to be 20 essence, 10-second cooldown. It's your gap closer and it destroys walls. Pretty self-explanatory. You're going to take this. Now a shocker one that I love taking is Arcane Veil. This is going to cost essence, essentially magic, but it's going to give you a damage reduction tool right away. 50% damage reduction. So even with one thing in here at 10 essence, lasting 20 seconds with a 15-second cooldown, you can use this on the hardest difficulty and play melee pretty tanky early on. Trust me, seems weird, but use it before you jump into combat. It will be big survivability. Speaking of survivability, we're going to go with another passive for that, and that's parry in the ranger skill line. If you're one of them Elden Ring players and have great reflexes, you're going to want to do this because you can do perfect block against a melee attacker and then get an immediate counterattack. So you're going to be playing in the melee fray. You got to have tools to survive early on. And that's going to take us to level 5, and you have some choices at level 5. My favorite is Shadowing Beyond. Channel the Beyond, becoming invisible, draining your essence until your next combat action. So why this is so impactful is you take this skill, and then you can use this Define Thorn. You sneak behind, and it triggers this stealth attack mechanic and basically one-shots almost everything except bosses. And so you can clear these bounties and kill these bosses. It's really dependent on your essence. You can also use this to stealth res companions. It seems odd on a fighter, but trust me, early on the harder difficulties, when you have very little tools to increase your damage, this gives you both survivability and damage all in one. Another option people are going to want you to take or talk about is Barbaric Shout. Now, this is going to be the same essence cost, so 40, duration of 15 seconds, 15-second cooldown. What's nice about it is your weapon attacks become interruptible and you deal high amount of stun. But a lot of times you really need to upgrade this thing to round 2 or 3 to make it worthwhile, and round 2 taunts all nearby enemies. We don't want to taunt, so it's kind of a useless skill when we can get AoE from other sources later on, but pick it if you think your AoE sucks and you just want to have something else. Next up is Survivalist, one of my favorite in the game. We're going to take this. Food restores 20% more health and essence, and bonus effect durations are increased by 20%. If you haven't watched my other videos, you'll know that basically consumables are essentially amazing OP, specifically stuff like this, 500 essence, 750 health regen. So even early on, when you're unlocking Survivalist, rely more on your consumables to restore health and essence versus spamming potions, because you'll be out. Then you're going to want to buy them and you're going to be out of gold. It's a no-go. Invest in Survivalist. Also, you can stack tons of these buffs on top of each other. So I thought there were just 1 or 2 at a time until I just spammed a bunch of them and looked in the bottom left of my screen, and I have a huge amount of recovery, a huge amount of buffs, and it makes combat so much easier. So essentially at this point in the game, you can pre-buff with Shadowing Beyond and or Arcane Veil to go in stealth, and then you get a bubble up. Your consumables are going to carry your resource sustain and survivability, and you should be nuking things pretty good pretty early on. Now, survivability, we're going to do one more. Constant recovery. After taking damage, slowly regenerate 50% of your health. Now, this is super helpful in the beginning of the game because you're not going to have a lot of resources and ways to get back health without going into camp over and over and over. It's very good later on at the game too, because all-out recovery and healing keeps you alive, especially when you're playing melee. Gotta have it. And we're still doing a couple more survivability ones. Evasive. You're going to reduce the cost of dodge by 25%. So whether you're parrying or dodging, you're going to be doing a lot with your stamina. And if your reflexes suck, you can really lean into this evasive and dodge a lot to avoid damage versus just face tanking everything. So I take this. Now we're going to get into the more offensive choices. So we're going to go back to fighter and we're going to take devastating criticals. Critical hits with melee weapons deal 30% more damage. This is one of the benefits of playing a melee build, is this specific passive here is going to make you really bursty. But you're not going to have a whole lot of critical chance unless you pump up perception. However, there is a passive we're going to take a little bit later on, Critical Strike, that's going to increase your critical chance by 10% flat, and you can even boost it to 20 with 3 skill points. So the Ranger Critical Strike and the Fighter Devastating Criticals really synergize well, giving you a lot of burst damage. Now for our solution for AoE damage, we're going to go with Power Jump. So this is 30 essence, 20-second cooldown. You jump and crouch mid-air and it does AoE. The nice thing about this is it doesn't say this in the tooltip, but not only does it do damage, it kind of staggers and stun locks them a bit. So you can use this even on a single target to kind of stun lock them, knock them back, and then beat the crap out of them while they're just kind of staggering around. Another option is Power Slide if you like the mobility and you want another way to knock down enemies. Same essence cost, same sort of thing. But I like the Fighter Power Jump instead. Now, I'm going to take the Wizard skill, Arcane Veil. I'm going to take the second rank inside of it because incoming arrows or similar projectiles are reflected back at enemies. So this is just an easier way to deal with ranged archers nuking you, because that will be the bane of your existence. And it seems odd taking a Wizard skill, but it's much easier and effective just to have this than constantly time perfectly and take 3 or 4 passives to mimic just one thing Arcane Veil needs to do. You'll have to remember to actually use it and spec in it, so be careful with that. Now we're going to take Bleeding Cuts. So Bleeding Cuts is going to make power attacks with axes and great swords deal bleed accumulation. Doesn't have to be the full massive power attacks. You can kind of like animation cancel this, holding it down for like a short little nanosecond, and it should trigger. You're going to see a little symbol above the enemy's head that shows the bleeding icon. Feel free to stack multiple sources of status effects, including grenades. So you can hit them with the bleed, peel back, throw an electric, throw an ice, throw a poison, and even throw a fire and stack a bunch of them. One of the NPCs, Yatsley, your fourth companion unlocked, has a bunch of passives that will actually trigger different status effects, like fire aspect here. You have shock aspect on this one. And last but not least, Affliction Blast has a 5% chance to inflict frozen, ignite, or shock. That is awesome if you use her, because with the bleed and all these status effects, you will just melt enemies' health passively. Okay, next we're going to do Brawn, which is just going to increase our two-handed melee weapon damage by 25%. Something to know about these passives is their diminishing returns, right? So you get 25% at first, and then you get 15, and then you get 10. So taking 1 point in it early on gives you a significant boost, where you'll kind of mid-max later on and not take rank 3 unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, at level 14, I actually save my passives because there's two really important ones that come at level 15. So I'd recommend saving at 14 and then getting these two at 15. First is Bear Ally, one of my favorite abilities in the game, summons a bear. At first, just kind of hang around, attack things, and be really fun. But at rank 2, level 18, when you summon it, it will roar and taunt everything. This is when I replace Kai as my primary companion, because I don't really need it. Then I can focus on having a healer and having Yatsley doing AoE damage, or if my survivability is high enough, I'll focus on having Maria, single target, Yatsley, AoE damage, and status effects. The other one I'm going to take is Critical Strike, so it's going to boost that critical by 10%. Now we're going to have a good synergy between Critical Strike and devastating criticals. Now we're at level 16, I'd recommend taking a point in Shadowing Beyond 2. This is flexible here if you want something else. But you're going to be gain increased stealth attack damage and move speed. It's just helpful for bursting with that godlike ability. You're going to reach level 17 now, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to save that skill point, and then when you reach 18, you're going to take rank 2 in Bear Ally, and then rank 2 in Critical Strike. So at this point, your bear is going to taunt things for you, which is amazing, and it lasts for a very long time. So I drop Kai, I get Yatsley or Giada now to heal and or do AoE damage, and the game should be significantly easier at this point. If you still struggle with survivability, get Kai in there and get Giada in there to heal you. You should not struggle with survivability at all, especially if you're hanging back, throwing grenades after you're doing the power attacks to trigger that bleed. You'll be able to do really good damage on target. And then you can always swap to a bow on your back bar. Even though you won't have a lot of passives, just getting damage out is better than sitting there AFK waiting to go into melee range. And then we're going to reach level 19. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to save our skill points because we're going to want 2 when we hit level 20. And when we hit level 20, we're going to go with Clear Out. This is massive AoE. It knocks down kind of enemies similar to this power jump, and it deals a lot of damage in one full rotation. And once you upgrade it, you can get 2 or 3 rotations, making it amazing. Now, another amazing skill is Flurry of Blows. This costs a ton of essence, but you're going to gain attack speed, stamina regeneration, increased move speed. The real reason we're going to try to get this unlocked is rank 2, you're going to grant lifesteal to your weapon damage. So this is a passive way to go on the offensive with your two-handed melee and all the other bells and whistles we have for survivability, and just chunk people with them power attacks, causing bleed and getting life back. It's absolutely amazing. You got a pre-buff with it, so use that before you jump into combat and watch your essence. It is hefty. Now at level 21, we're going to take rank 2 because we want that lifesteal so bad in the game. You got it. And then now we're getting up there in levels and up there in combat. We're going to take Survivalist rank 2 because it's going to unlock really powerful healing and food recipes. We're going to go back and we're going to take another rank into Clear Out. So that's going to give us another spin to win, huge damage. Rank 24, we're going to go Devastating Criticals. We're reaching diminishing returns, but 20% more critical damage is huge for us. And then rank 25, we're going to top it off with Survivalist rank 3, so we can get more food, recipes, the best in the game. Now, typically this is the point where you're at, depending on how many side quests you've done, before reaching this place of no return. Now, the max level is 30, okay? But the point of no return, you're not going to be able to go do a whole lot on the open world, so just be aware of that. If you're still struggling, something you can do is not take rank 3 and survivability and then take this Inspiring Triumph. You'll passively be able to heal your allies just by killing things, and this is super helpful if they keep getting downed over and over or you're not able to maintain that bear. Another thing that you might want to invest in besides that, what I suggested, is this blood magic. Typically, I take this towards the end of the game. But when your essence is depleted, you can cast spells with your health. So with Giada in the party constantly healing you, or you having those consumables that will run a lot of health regen at a time, this will allow you to just constantly keep up those really important buffs. Shield if you need it, the bear if you need it, and do a lot of damage and have good survivability as long as you have that passive healing coming in. But let's say you're going to keep on playing, I would say clear out rank 3 would be at level 26. Flurry of Blows would be at rank 27. My character save is 26, so I can't take that. And then I would finish out a couple different things like Bleeding Cuts here at 28. And then I would take Brawn and Blood Magic to finish it off, just to make sure that you can keep on casting. The biggest gameplay tips I can give you when you're playing a fighter is you're going to spec into survivability at first. So you need to understand dodge is how you get out of the way. You can parry by timing those blocks. You need to be able to front load consumables that are going to give you health regen and essence regen. I would highly recommend using the Arcane Veil bubble skill, especially when you're very first starting out. Charging in seems odd, but survivability is number one until you learn the hang of the game. Also, time on target might be an issue for you, so buy and craft a lot of grenades if you can. The grenades seem weak, but they are awesome and seem to scale over time, so they're a really good damage over time tool. Also, you're going to need to manually use your companions from time to time. They won't always just go out and spam abilities when you want them to. So feel free to pull up that skill menu constantly and assign companion specific tasks, because they won't just do it automatically when you want them. And you want to use their abilities more frequently, so they come on cooldown, they come off, and you're getting high damage with them. Specifically, Marius, great single target. Even Kai can do pretty good damage, or at least keep critters off you. Make sure you're going back to the camp and constantly crafting things for your health and survivability. Once you get Survivalists unlocked, there's going to be tons of crap you're just going to pick up you think is junk. But if you have that unlocked, you'll be able to craft a whole lot of things that will even be more powerful than potions. Don't forget to take those consumables and pre-buff prior to fight. So you can get tons of things that add max health, increased damage, max might, increased damage straight up, increased speed, and then increased damage and damage reduction. So take these, don't stock them so you end the game with 30 of them and go, man, I should have never used it. Now, as far as companions go, I'd recommend as you play, Kai is going to be your bread and butter early on. Fire and Ire is going to be that taunt. You're going to want to get quick reload passive straight away so he uses it more frequently. The next skill you're going to want to invest in is Leap of Daring, and then Leap of Pride passive. It's going to double the area effect for Leap of Daring, so you're going to hit more targets in AoE situations. Once you unlock Marius, the best skill I like is the Heart Seeker. I like the reduced cooldown because it hits so hard early on, you don't really need to buff it, and it'll just one-shot most of the enemies early on. Also, Binding Roots is helpful if you have some annoying melee guy that Kai can't get you. Root him in place. Now, depending on your level, you're going to be right around 18 is when you're going to use the bear skill. I like Giada to heal, just depending on where you are, who you're going to drop. Drop Kai as soon as you get the bear and start using it, so carry Marius and Giada. Now, once you reach endgame, Yatsley is just so incredible because she has the ability to constantly trigger and proc those status effects that sync up with the bleed damage. And so at the end of the game, typically I went with Giada and Yatsley, depending on my survivability. If it was really high, I'd go with Marius and Yatsley and just absolutely melt everything. Let's touch on gear real quick. I'm not going to go over every single little item that I have, but the number one that I like is the Philosopher's Riddle. And so you can find this in Dawnshore. So in Dawnshore, when you very first start out, there's going to be this landing. If you come over here to Castle's Folly, you're going to have this little jump puzzle thing to climb all the way to the top. The NPCs are going to be pretty tricky, but you come kind of down over here, up and around, and you can get this weapon. Now, you're going to want to maintain only 1 or 2 weapon types and not upgrade a bunch of them, so I'd highly recommend investing in that early on, upgrading it, and carrying it throughout the entirety of the game. I took the Cutting Resort Power Attacks deal High Stun and Bleed Accumulation, and also hits deal poison damage as well, so I want a lot of status effects if I can, and a lot of bleed. Now, your back bar weapon, you're going to want the Long Touch. It has a 5% damage against enemies with full health. So this is really useful when you very first start out, and you're going to use it as an opener when you're hidden in stealth and aiming for weak points. How you get this is in this northern paradise. Can't pronounce it. There's a merchant back here, and you can just buy it for some gold. It is going to be a hefty gold price, so just be aware. And then for early game armor, go with this Stelger's Pride. You can find it in a chest in the northern eastern part of the map with Watcher's Mirror up here. There's also an Ancient Memory up here, and then you can get the Totem, which is helpful for the buffs in your camp right here. So I'd recommend doing the main story quest, which takes you up here to level 6, and then just beeline over here, getting all these unlocks and getting this along with the medium armor set. All right, end game. My favorite little set here is Lava Forge Plate. This is in the final area of the game. Part of the main story quest, Our Dreams Divide Us, will take you into this Mount Fjord area, and there's going to be some lava where you have to do a jump puzzle, and you can find it inside of here. Also, this Bracer of Bloodletting is going to give you 5% bleed damage, super useful. You can get the Berserker Boots, 100% stamina regeneration, also useful. And one of my favorite things here is the Ring of Greater Overseeing, AoE damage by 20%. But I think the best bow in the game is this Ancient Alacrity. You're going to find this underneath Solace Keep as part of the main story quest. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's going to be a boss inside of here, so look for it there. So gang, that's a build. Hope you're enjoying Avowed. I really like the flexibility and the skills and the things that you can do in the game. It's a lot of fun to start back over, especially if you're playing a wizard. When you originally played a fighter, it plays a lot different. So if you got something out of this video, like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and I'll know if you want me to do some more builds. I appreciate you watching.